I had to let hold on, participants make it so there's no waiting room. That's the first rule of office hours, because you just want people to be able to pop in. It is the virtual equivalent of having your door open. Like if you've ever had office hours with a professor and you go in and their door is closed, what do you think, right? You expect that they're going to have someone sitting in there with them. So every other time their door should be open. And yeah, that's kind of like the analog of doing this. I have to say, more enable waiting room than disable that so people can just come right in. And then when they do, then I will say enable waiting room. It seems like a dumb way to do it, but that's as close as we can get to like having a door that opens and closes. So I went live last night because I was looking at my thing, your notifications list, and it was just like 30 people that I follow all live at the same time. And I was like, oh wow, everyone goes live on Tuesday night. So I was like, I'm going to check it out and see why, right? So I did, and then everyone who came in was just insults, like just rudeness, your potty mouth language that you can get away with through the filters is as bad as you can pretty much make it. So, and I was like, oh, that's not exactly what I'm looking for here. So I promptly ended it when people were saying things that just get through the content filters, but probably are just as bad anyway. You can be really graphic and say really disgusting things without using banned words. It's kind of like, that's the weirdness of using suggestive language. Like, obviously, suggestive language has existed since language, and sometimes it is how you say it rather than what you say. But when we're here and you've got comments instead of like nonverbal stuff that you can throw at people, you can use words in a very weird and uncomfortable way. And I have adopted this perspective of, I don't understand what you're saying. Like, it's a weird way to interact with people. But yeah, my default now is, I don't know what that means. And I read it and my interpretation of it is, I don't know. I don't know what that means. So I'm not even going to address it if I don't understand it instantly, because frankly, when you're interacting with people who are completely anonymous to you, you don't know the voice. You don't know their tone. You don't know what they mean when they say something. So oftentimes we ascribe negative to people by default. Like, they're going to be talking to us on here and we read it in a voice that is, oh, that person is very critical of me. They're being rude. They want to hurt me in some way. And that sort of default, like assuming that everyone is a troll by default, it affects people in a weird way. Like, when you give people the room to show that they have good intentions without having to like explicitly say it, that's kind of like the ideal space to exist in, where people can go in and not be taken to be a threat or assaultive. But that's idealism. You can't really assume that. It makes us unsafe to assume that everything is safe, right? There's that whole aspect of situational awareness. Like, if you assume that you're safe everywhere you go, you are prone to having your legs swept out from under you. Like when you go to a resort and you say, oh, this is a nice resort, I'm not going to have my bags stolen or my wallet rifled through when I'm out. And then, so I'll just leave all my stuff out. And then it happens that you get something stolen from you because you assumed that even though this is an expensive or nice place, that it's going to be free from negative events happening. And negative events are not always necessarily people directly hurting us. The existence of negative stuff around us is a negative thing. It's, like, why do you feel depressed or why do you feel sad? You get on social media, you see a bunch of stuff, you're just like flicking past everybody, and suddenly comes up something that is just deeply hurtful to you, even though you're not involved at all. You're just a passive observer. Kind of like nightmares. You know, like having a nightmare is really just your brain regurgitating whatever random stuff you took in. And it can't actually hurt you for the most part, unless some exception exists that I don't know about. Yeah, you're just basically a passive observer, and your brain is conjuring up all the things that actually hurt or make you feel uncomfortable. And yeah, it's sort of like being in the presence of negative things. Negative thoughts rise out of negative situations, and sometimes they can rise out of completely nothing. So does that mean that, you know what I mean? Like, is negativity endemic to the human condition? Like, are we cursed for a negative existence all the time because negativity does exist? I don't like to think about things in that way. Like, if you're having a bad time, if you're like upset or just stuff sucks, like, it's okay to feel bad and feel sad and feel like everything is awful, but nothing is permanent. Like, suffering is not permanent, even though suffering, the concept, is permanent. Suffering will not go away, but joy will not go away either. And our fading in and out of these different conditions is kind of like how life works. Like, everything changes, you know? And once you sort of grasp onto that nothing is final. Our identities are always in transit. We're moving from one place to the next. Like, I'm not, just because I've been a skater my whole life, doesn't mean that at some point I won't be. You know, it's not going to hurt my feelings if it's suddenly like I have to give up skateboarding. Yeah, it'll make me sad. I haven't been able to skate for like a good session for probably like 2 weeks, and it upsets me because it's something I like to do. But that's the very nature of identity. It's like, it's not who you are. It's the condition that you're in, and it is the things that you engage in. Sometimes you look back on the past 5 years and realize how you could have never expected any of it. And it might be the result of me, like, living the life that I have lived. Every career that I have had, and I think I've talked about this in live before, has been the result of just some weird happenstance. Like, I took action to do things that I wanted to do, and the things that happened as a result of that, I could have never chosen. They just happened. Like, I was in college when I was a teenager, and I was absolutely miserable. I hated it. And everyone around me, I just have this really crystal clear memory of sitting in a psychology class. I was in the very back corner, so you know, I'm a teacher now, so I know the kid who sits in the back corner really doesn't want to be there. You don't want to participate, you don't want to be seen, you're just barely getting by. That's where I was. And on my left was my roommate, and in front of me was my friend. And over in the very front of the classroom was this guy, and he always wore a really light colored denim jacket, which I thought was really corny. I was like, this dude showing up in this like crispy, light, acid wash jeans jacket. I was like, what a dork. And he was always talking to the teacher in class, but basically it was class participation. And his whole thing just made me so upset because everything he talked about was like in the interest of, how can I make money? How can I use psychology to become a money-making thing? And I was like, is this why everyone is here? Like, people only come to college because they want to make money? Like, that is awful. I don't want to be around that. And then there was this whole other thing going on about where the money I was using to go to college came from, which that's a whole other story. But I was looking at that and thinking, like, I don't want to be here. I don't want that. I don't want my life to be driven by, I'm only doing this to make money. Because at the time, I was doing music and art and sort of exploring like the whole sensory aspect of things, creating for the purpose of enjoying the creation. So I dropped out of school to become a touring musician. And went on tour around the US, was playing all the time, trying to get involved in as many projects as possible, pursuing basically a sensory experience instead of like, I want money. And because of that, I was put in front of different people who perceived me and saw value in me in different ways. And because of that, I was allowed to have opportunities that were taking place on a grander scale, the .com thing. Like, I was alive and I was around people who had technical experience and I had a little technical experience. So, I was given an opportunity. You feel no choice but to chase the money at this point in your life. There is nothing wrong with that. Because we're forced into the situation where we need money to live. It's naive to think like, when I was 19, I was naive. I was very naive. I didn't know anything. And I literally, when I dropped out of college, the night I decided I was dropping out, I had a show. I was in one of these bands, and we were playing at this bar, and there was a decent crowd of people there, and the sound was great, and the show was great, and I took home this beautiful person, and we were making out and all this stuff, and laying out in the grassy fields, watching the sunrise after just, doing whatever. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going back to school. This is what I want to do. But I had literal zero money, and I was just mooching off people. And, you don't, when you're the mooch, you don't realize like how unwelcome you are. Like, people don't necessarily want that guy hanging around. Like the guy who's living in somebody's house for free, crashing on their couch, like not making much of a racket, but not really contributing to anyone's well-being either. Yeah, it was selfish and it was naive. So like, having to make money is something we have to do because we want to be responsible. And can you be a person who pursues your senses and be a responsible person at the same time? Yeah, I know you can, because I know people who do that. But it's hard because it feels like you're shackled to this. Just money is a horrible curse. Like, having it and not having it. Just the very existence of it is such a weird, thinking about it in this like abstract terminology. It really is weird when you think about it, because it all comes back to the concept of value. Like, what do we value? What is important to us? Well, survival is important, right? So we have to put this measurable value on this thing that is survival, and then someone can give it or take it as they deem appropriate. But anyway, what was I talking about? Train of thought lost. Dropped out of school because of sensory stuff. I call it sensory stuff because what else do you call that sex, drugs, and rock and roll kind of lifestyle? That's all it is. You're just pursuing sensory fulfillment. It's not really a emotional... Well, no, there is emotion in it. There is emotional validation in a lot of... When someone enjoys you and you have a good time, there is sort of some validation there. But that's not what I was seeking. And I found that what I was really seeking was stability beyond all of that. And it took me a lot of years to discover that. So like when you're... All of my students, my youngest students are 17 and my oldest students are like in their 30s. And they're all in this state of I don't know who I am, and I don't know where the future is unknown, and I don't really know the right course of action. And that's why I feel like people who are driven by justice or moral things often have an easier time knowing who they are, because you have this concept that gives you a purpose. You have, I am driven to help. So that's what I'm going to do. So that's the essential thing about skateboarding. Like, I stopped skateboarding, am I still a skater? Well, you're doing the thing. The thing you want to do is help people. Are you help? You're a helper when you're helping. So the identity that you derive from like what you do is, I think, the important thing.